Hello everyone, welcome back to week 4 of Law, Crime and Punishment. This week's topic is punishment. For this week, we read an excerpt from the first chapter of David Garland's Punishment in Modern Society, a Study in Social Theory, and we also watched a TED Talk by Michelle Alexander titled The Future of Race in America. The main question we'll be discussing this week is why punish? This general, fundamental question leads to a series of more specific questions. What is the purpose of punishment? What is the rationale behind punishing people for past actions? What objectives are we trying to achieve by punishing the way we do? Another more specific question is why prison? What is the purpose of locking people behind bars? How have prisons become our default form of punishment? And, as a follow-up to the above questions, can you imagine a world without prisons? What would be the consequences of such a dramatic move? And finally, would a prisonless world be a better world? A safer world? A happier one? Another fundamental question is the question of quantity, that is, how much? Assuming we accept prisons as a legitimate form of punishment, we want to ask, how much prison time is right? On what basis should the length of prison time be decided? Should it be based on some objective measure, or should judges be given full discretion? And finally, could there even be an objective measure? States in the US vary in their desire to rely on an objective tool with which to decide on the length of imprisonment. Minnesota happens to be one of the pioneers in trying to objectify the process, and was the first to implement a sentencing guideline that serves as the basis for sentencing decisions. This is the most recent sentencing guideline for the state of Minnesota, effective August 1, 2018. This grid operates on the basis of two axes: the offense with which one was convicted, presented on the left vertical bar, and one's criminal history score, which essentially summarizes one's previous convictions. Now notice that the grid does provide judges with some discretion. For instance, let's take a case of a person convicted with a second-degree murder, that is an unintentional one, and has no prior convictions, which means a criminal history score of 0. Now for this case, the grid states the proposed sentence, which is 150 months in prison, which means 12.5 years. It also includes the range of months in prison that person will be sent to, from which the judge is not allowed to deviate. A minimum of 128 months, which is a little more than 10 years, and a maximum of 180 months, which is 15 years in prison. It is then up to the judge to decide on the exact sentence within that range. Another two important questions under the how much category are the following. Is there any justification for sending people to prison for life, what's known as life without parole? And also, is there any justification for killing people? That is the death penalty, the ultimate punishment? The final category of questions we'll be dealing with has a similar title to the first, but is essentially very, very different. It asks, why do we actually punish people? In other words, do our principles and theoretical justification for punishing people, the real and actual reasons for what's actually taking place in reality, or is there something else that's going on? Put differently, we ask, what kind of a relationship exists between the theories of punishment and the reality of punishment? For this set of questions, the inquiry process would be the opposite of the previous one. Instead of asking, why should we punish or why do we punish in the abstract, we first examine what happens in reality on the ground, that is, who gets punished and why, who does not get punished and why, and only then, based on our findings and data, we come up with theories to explain that very reality. This is essentially the difference between the philosophy of punishment and the sociology of punishment, a difference that David Garland delineates so beautifully in this week's reading. Punishment is a fascinating topic, and we'll continue examining it and discussing it later in the course. I hope you enjoyed today's mini lecture and that it brought up some interesting questions to mind. Hope you have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.